Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. Today I'm going to be reviewing Mountain in the Sea, which is a sci-fi novel from the early 2010s, I believe. Unfortunately, I do not have the book with me today because I left it at my parents' house. I finished it there, and usually when I finish a book, I put it down wherever I'm sitting at, and I walk away and I think about it, and I forgot to go to grab it again. So unfortunately, I won't be able to show it, but on my thumbnail, it will show like what book I'm talking about. This will be a non-spoiler review because I was actually very disappointed by this book, because the central premise of it is that a scientist is having a hunch that there's like a civilization of octopuses, under our oceans, and they have their own culture, they're able to use tools, and they want to prove that this is happening. And so that's the story. We follow the scientist as she learns about the octopi, and she's running experiments, doing video evidence sort of compiling, and I had a lot of expectations with this book. So the way that it was sold to me when it released back in like 2017, I think, because that was around the time when I'd first heard about this book, and I was like, that sounds so cool. I love the cover. It has like a big octopus, and it has all the tentacles going downwards into the ocean. You see the tentacles kind of holding up the island that the story takes place in on the cover. It's really cool. And the way that it was sold to me was that someone said octopuses have a culture, and this scientist learns about it, and they're able to it was described to me as a first contact story. And I'm trying to not spoil anything, but this is not a first contact story. It's more about the search for proof that octopi have their own culture. And I was fascinated by that. I love that idea. And so I was able to finish it. I think this book is great. I just put a lot of expectations into it. And I was very disappointed by it, because what was happening in my head for this book was that I thought our characters were going to be able to speak with the octopi and communicate with them. And one of the big sort of ideas of this book, that there's a pretty great sequence when this is sort of like comes to its culmination in the story. But it's this entire idea that octopi don't really want to interact with humans, and it's really hard to sort of find a way to communicate with a completely alien entity that has a completely different lived experience, being in the ocean and being in pitch blackness, because some of these octopi are deep into some trenches because they're trying to keep the civilization secret. And I really loved those ideas, but I don't know, I was really frustrated because a lot of this book is told through interviews and sort of the scientist just explaining what she is finding and what she's looking for. And I like that on one level, but what I thought this book was in my head, I was quite disappointed by it. So I will say that I enjoyed it. I haven't really stopped thinking about the book, so I don't want to give it anything below like a 7 out of 10, because objectively, I think it's 7 out of 10 or even higher, depending on your taste. But for me, with what I thought this story was going to be about, which was exploring the octopi civilization and the culture and what they think, and like all this, different details, like this is the exact same thing that I talked about with The Expanse, because I was really disappointed, and I remember talking with Amber, who I had on the channel, talking with about each of the seasons of The Expanse, and we talked about the books, And I remember telling her, like, oh man, I can't wait to find out more about the proto-molecule and all of the aliens that created this and, this, that, and the other. And she was like, okay, press on the brakes a bit. Like, these books aren't about that. And this book is exactly the same in that regard, where I thought we were going to be having some deep dive into an alien culture. And we did not. My favorite sequence in this book is when our character is filming like a submersible going on the bottom of the ocean, and she runs across this octopus that is staring out off of a continental shelf. And it's sort of just wailing because they pick up like these sounds that sounds like just a whale, was like, but like, it sounds musical. And this was my favorite sequence of the book because it describes the octopus like having lost its partner, and it's sort of blasting out this big like sort of like a prayer for its partner. And I really loved that scene. That was so cool. I thought the book would be all of that, which is us just observing the aliens. But the book wasn't about that, so I was disappointed. But that is not to say that this is a bad book. This is why I'm doing a non-spoiler review, because I think this is a great book objectively, but I just had a lot of expectations on it. So this is sort of my way of saying, like, y'all should read it. I did not get much out of it, but I think a lot of people will. And I really love sort of the scientific aspect as well. This was, if you're a fan of Three Body Problem, and especially book 2, I would say the first half of book 2, where we have sort of a lot of like government scientific discussions, and it's very detailed, very technical, and it's great. Like, I love that section of Three Body Problem. I know not many people did, but I did. And this book is sort of like a diet version of that, where it's not as in-depth, it's not as rooted in very complicated sciences as Three Body Problem was. But I think this is a great book. I would gladly read a book that was more to what I thought this book was going to be, but I think if I was to reread this in like 10 or 20 years, in like some buddy read with someone, I think I would greatly enjoy this book. But again, expectations, they definitely impede on enjoyment. So I think as I said, my rating was like a 7 out of 10. I think objectively it's higher, but I'm going to give it a 7 because I wanted more. I think it's a very cozy book. I read it in about 4 days. It was a very easy read. So not only is it a really interesting read, and I've been thinking about it, but it was also a really easy read. The prose was great. I thought it was very accessible. I don't know anything about biology, really. I took a few college-level biology classes, but I was actually going to declare myself as a biology major and actually work with sea turtles, and I never got into the class, so I did not change my degree. But I really enjoyed that this novel does not go into the weeds, and I think a lot of people will appreciate that as well, because this is like a 400-page book max, and it's so easy to read. It's fun. I think this is a great summer read. If you're by the pool, this is definitely the book you want to read, because most of it's in the ocean, and our characters are on like a Isla Nublar, where they're on like a scientific island studying these octopi, and it's great. I really love the beginning sequence as well, where we get, it's like in the prologue, we have a POV of like an older villager who is sort of watching all these scientists come onto the island, and he is really sort of resistant to it because he's like, these creatures that they're trying to find. Like, that is part of our, like, culture. They've been here for a very long time, longer than we have, us humans. And we see at the end of the prologue, this old man watches a couple squids come onto the island, and they get up and start walking on the tentacles. And I love that. That's what the book starts with. And I was so excited. And we don't really get that again. We get nothing like that again, except for the railing octopi, which I love that scene. That was so fun. But yeah, if you have any questions about this book, please ask them below. I hope more people read this book because it is great. Yeah, so as I said, this entire review. But thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this book, what you think about my review. And I'd really appreciate if you would like the video, comment, just show some support. Thank you all so much, and please have a great rest of the weekend.